Imagine a city so powerful, its very name sent shivers down the spine of Roman emperors, a place of wealth beyond belief, a prize fought over by empires, and eventually claimed by a new rising force, Islam. This isn't a myth. This is Ctesiphon. While Rome ruled the West with legions and law, another giant was rising in the East, a civilization born from the soul of Mesopotamia. It was elegant, ruthless, glorious, and at its heart stood the Sasanian Empire, with Ctesiphon as its crown jewel. But what made this city so irresistible to so many? Let's pull back the curtain. Long before Islam, before the Crusades, before the fall of Rome, Persia stood tall. At its peak, the Sasanian Empire stretched from the edges of India to the heart of Mesopotamia. Its armies thundered across deserts with armored cavalry and war elephants. Its cities dazzled with palaces, fountains, and golden domes. And at the center of it all, Ctesiphon, rising like a mirage from the banks of the Tigris River. Ctesiphon wasn't just a city, it was a living symbol of Persian dominance. It housed emperors known as Kings of Kings. From the massive halls of Ayvan-e Kasra, laws were made, wars were launched, trade flowed through its gates like a golden river. Silk from China, spices from India, jewels from Central Asia. Its markets overflowed with color, scent, and sound. Power was not just seen, it was felt. To the Romans, Ctesiphon was a rival that refused to fall, a scar on their pride, a city that defied its legions. Emperor Julian marched deep into Persian lands to reach it and died trying. Centuries later, Heraclius launched a brutal campaign, desperate to touch its golden walls. For Byzantium, conquering Ctesiphon wasn't just a strategy, it was vengeance. It was legacy. It was the one victory they could never quite hold. But if Ctesiphon was too strong for even Rome, what could bring it down? The night the Prophet Muhammad was born, the world didn't sleep. Something stirred in the hearts of empires. Something ancient began to crumble. In palaces from Ctesiphon to Constantinople, strange signs unfolded, as if history itself was catching its breath. The mighty arch of Ctesiphon, Ayvan-e Kasra, trembled. 14 battlements collapsed without warning, not from war, not from an earthquake, but as a silent scream from the heavens. Mobads and priests were summoned in the dead of night. The king couldn't sleep, because deep down he knew this wasn't just a stone falling. It was the first crack in an empire's soul. And then, a dream, one that would haunt the Sasanian court for years to come. Mobad the Great dreamed of camels and Arabian horses crossing the great Tigris. They scattered across Persian lands like shadows, like omens. It wasn't just a dream, it was prophecy, one no one in Ctesiphon wanted to believe, but no one could forget. Meanwhile, far from the palace walls, the eternal flame of Azargosh-Nasp, the sacred fire that had burned for generations, was extinguished. For the Zoroastrians, this flame was life, power, purity, and now silence, cold, darkness. Lake Save, a sacred body of water, suddenly dried up. A lake that had stood still for centuries, gone. But while Persia darkened, elsewhere the desert bloomed. Wadi Samawa, once a dead desert, burst into springs and flowing water. It was as if nature itself were turning a page, the old ways fading, and something new awakening. Even in the mighty halls of Byzantium, things were unsettled. Thrones shook, curtains quivered, and kings stammered. They felt it, too, the shift, the quiet unraveling of centuries-old power. Across east and west, the signs were undeniable, and whether written in stone, fire, or water, they pointed to one thing: the birth of a man whose words would echo farther than Rome, longer than Persia, and deeper than any empire could ever reach. These stories passed from tongue to tongue, generation to generation. They aren't just legends. They're the heartbeat of a civilization, remembering the night the world shifted. On the surface, Sasani and Iran gleamed like gold, majestic cities, invincible armies, grand rituals. But beneath that polished facade, the foundations were crumbling. Centuries of brutal war with the Byzantines had drained everything: gold, grain, soldiers, hope. Victory never came, only exhaustion. Behind the palace walls, another storm brewed, one not from the battlefield, but the throne itself. In the empire's final decades, kings rose and fell like autumn leaves, one crowned today, executed tomorrow. Court conspiracies, poisoned chalices, assassinations. The royal court became a theater of betrayal. Each new ruler is weaker than the last, each reign is shorter, and the empire's spine bent under the weight of instability. Zoroastrian priests grew rich and powerful, but the faith they guarded became hollow. Corruption ran deep, and whispers of rebellion rose even in sacred spaces. And then, from the deserts of Arabia, came a force no one expected, and no empire was ready for. The answer to centuries of Sasanian pride came swiftly. At Qadisiyah, the mighty Sasanian army, armored, trained, elite, collapsed, not just from swords, but from within. The empire's soul had already withered. The battle just made it official. The wind howled across the plains of Qadisiyah. Dust curled through the sky like smoke before a fire. Two worlds were about to collide. The old armored might of Persia and the rising flame of Islam. This wasn't just a battle. It was a reckoning. Rostam Farrukhzad, the empire's fiercest general, led the Sasanian ranks. His army towered in size, armored from head to toe, backed by war elephants and centuries of dominance. Opposite him stood Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, not a king, not a noble, but a man of faith, leading soldiers bound by belief, not bloodlines. This wasn't a war of numbers. It was a war of wills. And then they came. Elephants, towering beasts clad in steel, charged like mobile fortresses. Their trunks roared, their feet shook the earth. On the other side, the horses panicked, formations crumbled. The Muslim army had never seen monsters like these, but they learned fast. Strike the eyes, blind the beasts, cut the trunks, confuse the giants. Warriors like Zubair ibn al-Awwam pierced through fear and through elephant hide. One by one, the beasts turned and trampled their own. The Persians' advantage became their undoing, but the true breaking point was still to come. On the fourth day, a sandstorm rose, blinding, screaming, suffocating. They called it Yawm al-Gharib, the day of the stranger. In the chaos, Rostam was struck down, the hero of Persia, silenced. His death sent a chill through the Sasanian lines, and then they broke. When the dust finally settled, the impossible had happened. Persia's legendary legions lay defeated. The empire's gate had been kicked open, and the wave was coming. When news of Ctesiphon reached Ctesiphon, it hit like thunder cracking ancient marble. The court froze, the nobles whispered, and Yazdegerd III, the last Shahanshah, felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The empire wasn't just defeated, it was unraveling, and the heart of Persia was now exposed. In 637 CE, the unthinkable became real. Ctesiphon, the jewel of Iran, fell. The gates of Ctesiphon, once thought unbreachable, now swung open. The Muslim army entered a city untouched by war for generations. A place of legend, towering halls, gilded columns. Ayvan-e Kasra loomed above them like a relic from another world. They weren't just stepping into a capital. They were walking through the tomb of an empire. What they found defied belief. Jewels by the chestful, thrones inlaid with rubies and emeralds, silks that shimmered like flowing water, gold piled like grain in granaries. This wasn't just wealth, it was centuries of conquest, tribute, and pride. But while riches changed hands, a lonely shadow slipped out the back of history.